Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll be sharing my time today with the member from Mississauga, Brampton South. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to have the opportunity to speak to Bill C-31, Protecting Canada's Immigration System Act. Canadians have given us a strong mandate to protect Canada's immigration system, and we are acting on that mandate. Bill C-31 will make significant improvements to our refugee system. It will crack down on human smuggling, and it will provide the ability for the government to collect biometric data from foreign visitors to Canada. This piece of legislation will make Canada's refugee system faster and fair. It will put a stop to the abuse of our generous immigration system while at the same time provide protection more quickly to those who are truly in need. Bill C-31 is the latest step by our Conservative government to ensure that our immigration system is no longer being abused by foreign criminals, bogus refugee claimants, and human smugglers. And today, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to focus my remarks on the provisions included in this bill pertaining to biometrics. Mr. Speaker, Canadians from coast to coast to coast have told our government that the safety and security of their family is one of their top priorities. They want their government to pursue policies that keep criminals off the streets and foreign criminals out of the country. They should expect no less. Our Conservative government has listened and is doing exactly that. Bill C-31 provides the government with the authority to collect biometrics, fingerprints, and a photograph from foreign nationals who want to enter Canada. Security experts from across the globe agree that fingerprints are one of the most effective ways to determine the true identity of an individual and to combat identity theft and fraud. Biometrics will be an important new tool to help protect the safety and security of Canadians by reducing identity fraud and identity theft. As fraudsters become more sophisticated, biometrics will improve our ability to keep violent criminals and those who pose a threat to Canada out. In short, biometrics will strengthen the integrity of Canada's immigration system and help protect the safety and security of Canadians while helping to facilitate legitimate travel. And the use of biometrics will put Canada in line with most other Western countries, which already are using or preparing to use biometrics in immigration matters. Countries including the United Kingdom, Australia, the European Union, New Zealand, the United States, and Japan, amongst others. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, there are countless examples of serious criminals, human smugglers, war criminals, and suspected terrorists, among others, who have entered Canada in the past. I wanted to provide this House and all Canadians with some real-life examples of cases that clearly demonstrate the need for the biometrics to be implemented. For example, Ernst & Lang and David Wilson were convicted of armed robbery and forcible confinement. They returned to Canada 3 different times. In fact, they are known as the yo-yo bandits because just like a yo-yo, they kept coming back. I know that 3 times seems like a high number, but I'm sad to say that many serious criminals are deported and manage to return to Canada many, many more times than that, Mr. Speaker. Another example is Anthony Hakeem Saunders, who was convicted of assault and drug trafficking. He was deported on 10 different occasions. That's right, 10 different times. Just like the yo-yo bandits, he kept coming back. Edmund Izimo was convicted of more than 30 charges, including theft and fraud. He was deported and then subsequently returned to Canada 8 times. It's incredible. Dale Anthony Wyatt was convicted of trafficking drugs and possession of illegal weapons. He was deported and returned to Canada on at least 4 separate occasions. Yeah, it just gets better. Kevin Michael Sawyers was convicted of manslaughter. He was deported and returned to Canada twice. Then there is Melando Yafet Streety, who served a jail sentence in Canada after he was linked to 4 underage girls working in Toronto's sex trade. This criminal was deported and then returned to Canada within the same year. That's right, all within the same year. Once he returned to Canada, he continued his life of crime. My final example is in this case of human smuggler from Iran, who the IRB has found has repeatedly engaged in the despicable crime of human smuggling, and there really is few crimes lower than human smuggling. He was removed in 2007 after he arrived in Canada with a suitcase full of fraudulent identification in his briefcase. But using false documents yet again, he managed to enter Canada a year later. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, this is only a small sample of examples of serious criminals entering and re-entering Canada. There are even cases in which serious criminals were able to re-enter Canada using false identities and documents. Guess what? 15, 19, and even 21 times. Mr. Speaker, this absolutely has to stop. Our officials are very highly trained and do their best to catch identity theft and fraud. However, fraudsters have become more and more and more sophisticated, and so have the documents they produce. Biometric data will go a long way to determining the true identity of criminals and from preventing them from entering Canada in the first place. After years of inaction by previous governments, our Conservative government is taking the prudent action required to end this. And we will be unwavering in moving forward on the implementation of biometrics. Unfortunately, we are moving forward without the support of the opposition. The NDP and the Liberals are opposing this bill and the authority to implement biometrics, which is included and an integral part of this bill, Mr. Speaker. Not only do they not support the implementation of biometrics included in this bill, but the opposition also voted against the funding needed to put biometrics in place. In other words, the opposition NDP and the opposition Liberals have repeatedly voted against our government putting a stop to serious criminals, like the ones I listed above, from entering Canada and living in the neighbourhoods amongst their constituents, my constituents, and all Canadians, Mr. Speaker, who just want to protect their family from foreign criminals. Mr. Speaker, the opposition is on the wrong side of Canadians on the issue of biometrics, and they are offside with the numerous security experts and other stakeholders who have praised our government's decision to move forward with biometrics. For example, according to the Globe and Mail, the implementation of biometric identification, such as fingerprints and photos, for people who apply for visitors visa is, I quote, a welcome change that will guard against the use of false identities, unquote. And the Montreal Gazette had this to say, and I quote once again, the collection of biometric information is a sensible security precaution that will be a valuable tool in preventing people from slipping into the country with false identities, unquote. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we believe in facilitating the process for legitimate travelers, and we've taken several steps towards that end. But our government also takes its responsibility to keep serious criminals, suspected terrorists, and war criminals, amongst others, out of Canada. Canadians, including my constituents, Mr. Speaker, in the Etobicoke Centre, have made it clear that they want us to take action to protect their safety and their security. That is exactly what our Conservative government is doing with Bill C-31. Biometrics is one of the most effective ways to ensure that criminals can no longer use increasingly sophisticated false documents to enter Canada. In short, biometrics will strengthen the integrity of Canada's immigration system. In fact, all the changes included in Bill C-31, Protecting Canada's Immigration System Act, are aimed at deterring abuse of Canada's generous immigration and refugee system. With these proposed measures, the integrity of Canada's immigration programs and the safety and security of Canadians will be protected. I urge all members of this House to stop and listen for a moment to support this important bill and ensure its timely passage in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Beaches East York.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And from one member of the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration through you to another member, we are currently engaged in a study with lots of experts coming to talk to us at the committee on the very issue of biometrics. So it surprises me to see the member opposite giving such a hearty speech in support of biometrics. In my world, we would call that prejudice, Mr. Speaker, making decisions and coming to some judgment about biometrics before we've even done the study and listened to the experts. So through you, Mr. Speaker, I'm wondering what the member opposite actually thinks we're doing at the Standing Committee when we're actually studying and listening and talking to experts on the issue of biometrics.
Well, member for Etobicoke Centre.
First of all, Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. However, it's not prejudice to defend the safety, the security, and the families, excuse me a sec, of Canada and of our constituencies. That's an important role and important responsibility our government has. And as a parliamentary secretary had said earlier on, this minister listens, as he did in other matters involving this committee. He listened, he acted early, especially in the issues of the visas, and he's listening now as we go through committee and listen to experts talk about biometrics and securing our borders, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Mr. Speaker, you know, it's interesting. The member makes reference to the fact that biometrics would have resolved, and he talks about those horrendous or those terrible crimes. Most Canadians, I think, would believe that refugees that were deported that have committed those type of crimes would have already had biometrics done. They would have already had fingerprints and ID pictures, live ID pictures done, Mr. Speaker. It's only 6 years after being in government that the government has finally brought to the table biometrics, Mr. Speaker. And then they've bundled that in with other aspects of legislation in which the opposition has opposed. So I question his genuinity in terms of his belief that the opposition is somehow supportive of these criminals when he knows full well that we're not supportive of those criminals, and I would ask him to provide more clarity on that issue.
Honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do thank the honourable member for his question. I'm not suggesting that the opposition is in league with criminals. However, I think that they are short-sighted in their opposition of this bill, and because of short-sightedness, they're going to allow more criminals to enter Canada. So, Mr. Speaker, this government has a responsibility to protect Canadians and all Canadians and their families from these types of criminals entering, and biometrics will be a significant feature of that. This is a forward-thinking government, Mr. Speaker. We act, we don't wait, and we get it done for Canadians. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to compliment the member on his speech. Extremely well done. He serves the committee well, understands the file, and I wanted to speak to him about that from his riding's perspective, that one of the issues we can come here, stand in the House and sit in the House of Commons and stand to speak to particular issues and the impact they have across the country. But really, this is one of those issues that hits home time and time again in each one of our ridings. And, you know, the member has a caseload, whether it be dealing with visas, whether it be dealing with permanent residents, but also in terms of the refugee applications and the folks that come into his office to talk about that. I wonder if he could just allude to how much this bill would assist him from a local perspective in terms of delivering local services for his constituents.
The Honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for those observances and the question. Biometrics in my caseload file, I think, would go a great length to be able to solve a lot of the open files that we have and have seen in the past from not only my riding but other people's ridings. It would eliminate the confusion that exists in some of these cases and some of these files. And I think if we proceed on this is the right road and the right path for Canada and for all Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.